I'd like to call this special call Dickson County Planning Commission meeting to order. Good evening. I am Shane Chandler, Chairman of Dickson County Planning Commission. This meeting is being conducted pursuant to the guidance from the Comptroller's Office in accordance with Governor Lee's Executive Order Number 51. This special called meeting of the Planning Commission for July the 23rd, 2020, with proper notice and provided on the county's Facebook page and physical notices around the square, has been reported in local press and is being held electronically. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded by Dickson County's YouTube channel as necessary to protect public health, safety, and welfare in light of coronavirus. Only the county personnel and officials are physically present at this meeting. Further, I am requesting that the Planning Commission include this determination in the minutes for the meeting. We understand that the members of the Dickson County Planning Commission serve Dickson County in our legal defined roles, which we are currently live streaming this meeting to benefit of the public through our YouTube channel. A recording of this meeting will be available on our YouTube channel, and physical copies will be available at Dickson County Planning and Zoning Office within 48 hours of this meeting for any citizen who is interested in viewing a copy. I would like to thank everybody for their patience as we work through these difficult times. Let's see here. Can I get roll call?
Todd Berry.
Here.
Robert Witherow.
Here.
Shane Chandler.
Here.
Mac Pilkerton.
Here.
Robert Qualls.
Here.
David Brogdon.
Here.
Harold Williams.
Here.
Larry Evans.
Here.
Gary Peeler.
Here.
Wayne Durham.
Here.
Robert Comer.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we do have quorum.
Okay. There's no need to recognize visitors since this is all live streaming, but I would like to remind the commission that since we all are mandated to wear the mask, if you have something to present, please state who you are. At this time, we'll move into the approval of previous minutes. Did everybody look over their packet of the previous minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes as written.
Mr. Chairman, second.
I have a motion to approve the minutes by Robert Witherow with a second by Harold Williams. I'm sorry. R.J. Comer. Sorry about that. Once again, please identify yourself. Any further discussion on the minutes? Do have proper motion to approve the previous minutes. Without any questions, all in favor, we'll do a roll call.
Todd Berry.
Yes.
Robert Witherow.
Yes.
Shane Chandler.
Yes.
Mac Pilkerton.
Yes.
Robert Qualls.
Yes.
David Brogdon.
Yes.
Harold Williams.
Yes.
Larry Evans.
Yes.
Gary Peeler.
Yes.
Wayne Durham.
Yes.
Robert Comer.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll move into item number 1, driveway variance request for Lot 2 of the Sinsing property subdivision, map 76, parcel 15.06, 1.28 acres, Old County House Road and Liberty Road, Charlotte, Tennessee, A1 Agriculture, 1st District.
If all of you remember, this subdivision come through earlier in the year. Mr. Tim Invelson, he's a local contractor. He has bought all these lots. He's in the process of building houses. He's been out there approximately 4 months, and he come to the office and asked if we could come out and take a look. What has happened, where the driveway is supposed to go off the corner lot, is supposed to come off the less traveled road, which would be Liberty Road. What you realize, I don't know who's familiar with Old County House Road, it makes a half circle off of 47 from Charlotte to White Bluff. If you come out to the end at Charlotte, no matter which direction you turn, it's harder to see. So what he's noticed, all the local traffic hooks a left there at Liberty and comes out where you can see. So he's asking a variance in the name of safety. I know Mr. Collins had some comments.
Brian Collins, staff planner for GNRC. In review of this request, as Mr. Darnell had mentioned, we did review the plat for this, some time ago, and we at that time had, the Planning Commission agreed that to apply the standard as cited in Article 4, Table 4 of our subdivision regulations that requires driveways to be placed on the lesser status thoroughfare. Since Liberty Road is classified as, or considered a minor status road compared to Old County House Road, which is a minor collector, for this corner lot, this was, for Lot 2 that is, this is where we believe that the driveway for Lot 2 should be placed on the Liberty Road side. And of course, distanced no less than 75 feet from the intersection with Old County House Road. In review of this request, staff, as I normally do when we do encounter a variance request from our subdivision regulations, I cite the circumstances that are evident to me, and of course the citing of the subdivision regs where we do where the issue is being requested for variation from our standard. So that information is cited here in staff comments. As commonplace, staff will cite Article 1, Section 1-111, which provides the process for the Planning Commission to review a request for a variance from these standards. And as it's typically stated, the applicant does have the burden of proof to demonstrate to the Commission that they believe is evidence of extraordinary hardship or practical difficulties to comply with our regulations. In review of this request, I did go out to the intersection in question, and it's both roadways are posted 45-mile-an-hour speed limits. So it's certainly, and then of course the applicant did state in a written explanation that they provided where they believe there was a site visibility issue due to some overgrowth as well as a fence post, and I believe there's also a phone box, above ground phone box that's located at that intersection also. So it's certainly understandable that the applicant is noticing that for a homeowner to pull out of that driveway, if they were to put the driveway at the location we require, that they would have concerns. However, in the in review of this request, if this Planning Commission is so inclined to consider this instead of granting the variance, it would be certainly recommendable that the county consider either lowering the speed limit on one or both roads, create a three-way stop at the intersection, or a combination of all to minimize any such conflict point. So as part of staff's findings, it's certainly, I go back to the applicant has the burden of proof to demonstrate that that they have a safety issue here and request relief from our Article 4 standard. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Robert Wetterow, 2nd District Planning. In my working career, I had some customers out in that area, and I can understand the concern right there. And it's like you said, when these things come to us, we're looking at a plat, on a flat map, and we don't know what the terrain or the topography is. And I would just ask, Mr. Christie, if he can hear me, I hope so. If they can just put, the proposed driveway for lot 2 as close to lot 4 as practical. I really don't see a problem with granting this variance.
Okay. Do we want to link Mr. Christie in to where he could? Okay. So you want to form that in a motion? Mr.
Yes,
Whitaker?
I would make a motion that we grant this variance and that the lot 2 driveway be placed on the County House Road side of this lot and be placed as close to lot number 4 as practical.
Chairman, I would second that. I did travel out there today and took a look at that, and I would be in favor of it also.
Okay, that's Todd Berry. Have a proper motion to approve this variance or the moving.
Hey, Shane.
Yes. Yes, who's speaking?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Hey, this is Tim Envoldson.
Yes.
Hey, on that practical thing, what we tried to do, we tried to come out and we took pictures where we come out on Old County House where best you can see. The further I get closer to 4, of course, the less I can see coming from the west. And we've kind of marked it out. We're 100 foot from the intersection of Liberty and Old County House, greater than the 75 foot, originally proposed or originally in the plat. So we're way off the intersection, and we kind of put it right there on those pictures we provided, so you can see both ways just super.
Right.
So, I mean, I hope that's, the lot's 200 and some foot wide there facing County House, and hopefully 100 foot off that intersection would be considered in that practical definition, I guess. So
That would be, Mr. Envelson. That's why I'm saying, I'm looking at a flat picture here, and
Correct.
I don't know if there's a fire hydrant or if there's a big gully hole right there. So just put the driveway practically as close to lot 4 as you can. And if that 100 foot is off of that intersection is where it needs to be, then that's where you need to put it.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
Okay.
is that clear, Mr. Embleson?
Yeah. I just like you said, practical, because the plat, just like it shows, it's a flat piece of paper. It doesn't show anything.
Okay.
And we've been out there working since the very end of February, and we can see how traffic flies off County House, taking a quick left on Liberty. And if that driveway was right there, someone would get ran over pulling out onto Liberty off that. So it's much better. And yeah, we can work with that practical, off Old County House. That'll be fine.
Okay, so we do have a proper motion by Robert Whitterow and a proper second by Todd Berry to move Lot 2's driveway as close to Lot 4 as feasibly possible.
Discussion, Mr. Chandler?
Okay, yes, Mr. Coleman?
RJ Comer, I'm inclined to agree with my colleagues on the variance. However, I want to make sure we do this right. The variance requirements of our subdivision code require that we have written evidence to support the 4 findings that we must make in order to grant this variance. So the motion didn't reference the findings. I'll leave it to Commissioner Whitterow whether he'd like to restate his motion, but I'll finish what I'm going to say. The 4 findings that are set forth in section 1-111.1 are very specific, and they require written evidence for us to adopt them and grant a variance. Although I think the application is pretty bare on the written evidence responsive to the findings, I think we can still use the application to make the findings. I would encourage applicants and staff with variances or any approval that requires specific findings to include in your applications the findings and the evidence that supports that finding. so that we're not having to pull it out of a paragraph to make it. But I think we can do it here, and with the permission of Mr. Wetterow, I'd like to go through the written evidence relative to the 4 findings so that this variance can be approved in accordance with our requirements.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. Finding 1 requires that the granting of the variance will not be detrimental to public safety, health, or welfare, or injurious to other property. I believe that the first paragraph that shows the conditions of the roadway and the surrounding area is an issue of public safety, and that provides written evidence so that we can grant that finding number 1. Finding number 2 is similar. It says conditions upon which the request of the variance is based are unique to the property for which the variance is sought and not applicable generally to the other properties. This is a little more troublesome because it probably is applicable to the other properties, but we clearly can see that the conditions around this property warrant a variance for that public safety. So I think we have just enough to get over the hump on that. Condition number 3 requires that because of particular physical surroundings, shape, or topographical condition of the specific property involved, a particular hardship not self-imposed to the owner would result. I don't believe this hardship is self-imposed. In fact, I think the variance is a way to solve a hardship that is in the particular surroundings of the site. So I think we have written evidence in support of that finding. Finally, finding 4, the variance will not in any manner alter the provisions of the land development plan, major street or road plan, or any zoning ordinance. Clearly it will not. And I think that just the drawing that's included in the application is written evidence of that finding. With that read into the record, I think we can make the findings and approve the variance.
I'm not going to repeat all that.
Mr. Collins, would you like to comment on Mr. Comer's statements?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Collins again. Mr. Comer's citation of Article 1, Section 1-111 is certainly proper and formal for all applications for variances. It certainly has been an experience of mine and past variances, whether it's on the zoning side or the subdivision reg side, that they merely cite all 4 of these criteria and then just in their own words address how they believe that that they're able to comply with as much of our minimum standards as possible, including in this case these conditions. So I think for future reference, both myself and Mr. Darnell, that we will keep that in mind when we review all requests and report to the commission.
Okay, Mr. Wetterow, do you wish to keep your?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Robert Wetterow again. I have no objection to amending my motion to include Mr. Comer's comments.
Okay. Mr. Berry, do you wish to amend your second?
Yes, I do, sir.
Okay. All right, I do have a proper motion and a second.
Amended.
Amended by Mr. R.J. Comer's amendments. With that, we'll do a roll call vote.
Todd Berry,
Yes.
Robert Witherow,
Yes.
Shane Chandler,
Yes.
Mac Pilkerton,
Yes.
Robert Qualls,
Yes.
David Brogdon,
Yes.
Harold Williams,
Yes.
Larry Evans, Gary Peeler,
Yes.
Wayne Durham,
Yes.
Robert Comer.
Yes.
Chairman, motion carries.
Thank you, sir. We'll now move into item number 2, final plat of redivision of Lot 2 of the Aiken and Baird property, Highway 49 subdivision, map 45, parcel 9.00, 3.3 acres, Highway 49, Charlotte, Tennessee, A1 agriculture, 4th district.
If you remember when this first come through, this is on Highway 49 East as you head towards Ashen City. At that time, it was a preliminary plat and a driveway variance, but the driveway variance was on a state highway and it was an existing driveway. As you can see on the plat, he has got it, lot 2 is now divided into 2 separate parcels. And they still have lot 1 that is on the side of it. Mr. Collins?
This Planner Collins, and the only comments I have is the plat lacks all necessary signatures.
This is in the 4th District.
Had no problem with it. Mac Pilkerton, I have no problem with that.
Okay, is that the form of a motion, sir?
Yeah.
Okay, but you would like the proper signatures and all?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay, I do have a proper motion to pass item number 2, the final redivision of Lot 2, Aiken and Baird property, Highway 49 subdivision.
Robert Woodrow, second.
I do have a proper second by Robert Woodrow. Any further discussion on this item? If not, we'll do a roll call vote.
Todd Berry,
Yes.
Robert Withrow,
Yes.
Shane Chandler,
Yes.
Mac Pilkerton,
Yes.
Robert Qualls,
Yes.
David Brogdon,
Yes.
Harold Williams,
Yes.
Larry Evans, Gary Peeler,
Yes.
Wayne Durham,
Yes.
Robert Comer.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, motion carries.
Thank you, sir. We'll now move into item number 3. Final re-subdivision of the amended lot 14 of the Westbrook subdivision, map 104D, parcel 7.00, 2.23 acres, Dewey Drive, Dickson, Tennessee, A1 Agriculture, 9th District.
If you look at the one plat, this subdivision originally goes back to 1997, and they developed 15 lots. In 2017, lots 14 and 15 were combined back together to make one lot, lot 14. Now they've come back and they want to split lot 14 back into 14 and 15 like it originally was. Mr. Collins?
Planner Collins here. In review of this request, it appears that there is a TVA transmission line easement that cuts across the back portion or the southern portion, whichever you want to call it, of the proposed lot 15. On this particular amended plat, it does show the building envelope as illustrated encroaching into that TVA easement. And since the transmission line easement is not to be built in with structures, residential structures in this case, that's certainly one modification that staff would recommend, that the building envelope of lot 15 be reduced to the point where it aligns with the TVA transmission line easement. Also, according to this second amended plat, there is the presence of Big Branch, which is a tributary of West Piney River that crosses this parcel as well as lot 14 and goes under Dewey Drive in a northeastern fashion. And of course, although this was not addressed on past plats, it's certainly been revealed to us now. So here again, staff recommends consideration to be given to apply drainage easement so that that can minimize obstruction to this natural drainage with development on both lots. Those were the only two issues that I certainly advocate for modification. But other than that, it's the just lack of all necessary signatures, so I see.
Mr. Qualls?
Robert Qualls, District 5. So this is redividing 14 and 15 precisely to the original configuration of September of 1997.
Correct.
Okay. Then I don't see any problem with it, provided Mr. Collins' issues are properly addressed in in this re-amendment of the plat?
There was a motion.
I can make it a motion, Mr. Chairman, if you need. I move for the amendment to the recorded plat of Lot 14 of Westbrook subdivision, Section B at the end of Dewey Drive to allow re-subdivision into a Lot 15 of 1.1 acres with the inclusion of all necessary signatures, a revision to the building envelope for that lot to match the TVA easement boundary, and a drainage easement for Big Branch across both Lot 14 and Lot 15.
RJ Comer, second.
Mr. Speaker, Gary
Yes.
Peeler,
Yes.
that's in my district, and I second that motion.
Okay. Do you yield or do you?
I yield to my colleague from the district.
All right, I do have a proper motion by Robert Qualls and a proper second to approve this with the staff comment amendments. By Gary Peeler, second. Okay. Any further discussion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote.
Todd Berry,
Yes.
Robert Witherow,
Yes.
Shane Chandler,
Yes.
Mac Pilkerton,
Yes.
Robert Qualls,
Yes.
David Brogdon,
Yes.
Harold Williams,
Yes.
Larry Evans, Gary Peeler,
Yes.
Wayne Durham,
Yes.
Robert Comer.
Art, yes.
Chairman, motion carries.
Okay, we'll now move into item number 4, final plat for lots 2 and 3 of the T&M Hooper subdivision, map 76, part of parcel 24.55, Highway 47, Charlotte, Tennessee, 2.02 acres, A1 agriculture, 1st district.
This was surveyed by Christie's Surveying. This is lots 2 and 3. It is on State Highway 47. They do have sewer access. Lot 1 was cut off on the corner of Highway 47 and Long Road. So this will be lots 2 and 3 of the same subdivision. Mr. Collins?
Planner Collins here. In review of this, let's see. I did note that I'm just going to chalk it up as just a typographical error by the surveyor that under surveyor's note number 2, it states remaining portion of parcel 24.56. I believe that it's referring to, it should be referring to parcel 24.55 being added to 24.54. So that's just a very minor correction to make there. But other than that, it's just lacks all the necessary signatures.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Berry.
Todd Berry, District 1. I don't see a problem with this at all, and I would move that we would approve the final plat, T.M. Hooper subdivisions, lots 2 and 3, with the addition of staff comments, the corrections.
Okay, thank you, sir. I do have a proper motion by Todd Berry to approve this, lots 2 and 3. Do I have a second?
I'll second it. Robert Witherow, District 2.
I have a proper second by Robert Witherow. Any further discussion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote.
Todd Berry,
Yes.
Robert Witherow,
Yes.
Shane Chandler,
Yes.
Mac Pilkerton,
Yes.
Robert Qualls, David Brogdon,
Yes.
Harold Williams,
Yes.
Larry Evans, Gary Peeler,
Yes.
Wayne Durham,
Yes.
Robert Comer.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, motion carries.
Thank you, sir. And we're about to move into item number 5 and 6. They relate to each other. At this time, Mr. Wayne Durham would like to make a statement, and then Mr. Potter, our legal representation, I believe, would like to make a statement.
Yes, this is
Durham.
Wayne Durham, District 11. I have a conflict with these next 2 items and need to recuse myself from voting.
Thank you, sir. Let the record reflect that. Mr. Potter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, members of the commission, what's before you as item number 5 is the site plan approval for this project. Please recall, and here's why it's on the agenda, it was requested to be on the agenda and was placed back on the agenda because following the approval of this body on April the 23rd by a vote of, I think, 7-3 to approve the site plan, a writ of certiorari was filed against the county, against the action that this body took, alleging that there were some procedural problems with the way in which the site plan was approved. And as county attorneys, while we disagree with those allegations and do not think there were procedural problems, approval of the site plan tonight could cure some of those procedural problems. Our job is to represent you. It's not our project and it's not our vote. Our job is to represent you and whatever you do. And you approved the site plan by a vote of 7-3. In the writ of certiorari that was filed by an LLC, Turnbull LLC, and 2 citizens, the allegations in the petitions were that there was not adequate notice of site plan approval on August the 23rd. The second allegation was that the Planning Commission acted arbitrarily and capriciously when it held this meeting on April the 23rd, 2020, in light of recent orders by the mayor to close facilities because of COVID, apparently. And the third procedural argument that is made is that you acted arbitrarily and capriciously by refusing to allow residents to speak at the April 23rd meeting. And as you know, based on the advice that we gave you, that was not a public hearing. So that is what is before you tonight, is approval of the site plan, which you've already done by a vote of 7-3. And I'll answer any questions if you have them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Potter. And, okay, we will now move into item number 5, which is the site plan review for project DV, map 131, part of parcel 012.00, 146.69 acres, Hogan Road, M1, heavy industrial, 6th district. Mr. Darnell?
All of you have seen the site plan. This is one you had in April. I know Mr. James is on there, and he'll talk to you more, I'm sure.
Okay. We ready for Mr. James? Mr. James, are you on?
Yes, we're here.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay, very good.
Yes, sir. We can hear you fine. Go ahead.
All right, very good. As it was determined by legal counsel, the reason we're here is because of a technicality in supposedly how the meeting in April was advertised. And so, as he said, you approved it in April. The plans that you've got are exactly the same plans that we submitted for that meeting. And we would request reapproval of the plans.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Collins, do you have any further statements?
No, Mr. Chairman. I've not received any revised site plans, so I'm taking it on the account that it has not changed since we reviewed it first.
Thank you, sir. What is the will of the board?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask some questions. R.J. Comer.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to let's move for approval of the site plan for Project DV, map 131, parcel 012, 146.69 acres, Hogan Road.
Okay, I do have a proper motion by Robert Witherow. Mr. Comer, since he did throw the motion out there, let's see if there's a second, then we'll go into discussion. Do I have a second for this motion?
I second it.
I have a second by Mike Pilkerton to approve the site plan review for Project DV. Okay, now we'll go into discussion. Mr. Comer.
Thank you. My first issue is to staff. I've been asked a number of times by the public a question I can't answer, and that is, if we approve this site plan and also approve item 6, is that the end, or is there more coming to us for this application? And what are those things?
This was the site plan for the grading. You have the buildings themselves, you have landscaping, you'll have several different options that will be coming forward.
Can we expect to see a number of plans, you know, pretty much every meeting for the foreseeable future? Is that what we're looking at?
That would be up to the developer.
Okay. But among those plans that are going to come before us are a landscape plan. You said building plans?
Yeah, you'll have a set of construction plans to approve, yes.
All right. Thank you for that. The second item is the site plan review that was approved in April was also approved pursuant to a traffic study that has since been revised and submitted to us. And I'd like to go over that traffic study. I distributed a memo to staff and to the colleagues dated July 21 is my analysis of the revised traffic study, and I'd like to go through that traffic study with the applicant, whoever is most knowledgeable to answer questions.
Okay, Mr. Comer, I will give you Darrell James's exact words on the traffic study taken from the audio tape of
Who's speaking?
May 14th. This is Shane,
Oh,
the
thank you.
chairman.
Yeah.
The exact words of Mr. James: we will update the traffic study again, count the traffic after school comes back, whether it be fall or spring.
Exactly, Mr. Chandler, and that's not what happened. The revised traffic study that's been submitted to us this month did an alternative methodology, did not recount the baseline trips based on school in session. They instead used the 2017 National Household Transportation Survey and just added 10%. As far as I know, this was a unilateral action, different than what was agreed to at the May, actually that amendment was at the May hearing. And so because we've got now a revised traffic study that's different than what we agreed to, and this site plan review is dependent upon the validity of that traffic study, I think we need to go through it step by step, and I'd like to do that with the applicant.
Okay. Well, I would like to ask legal's opinion that we agreed to. We will update the traffic study and again count the traffic after school comes back, whether it be fall or spring. Can you give me your interpretation of what that means? Because that's what we voted on.
I think, Mr. Chairman, it was a site plan approval, and subsequent action that's going to be brought before this body will be approval of the final plat, and certainly that can be done with contingencies.
Yes, sir.
And we can talk about what those contingencies are. We have some suggestions. I think staff has some suggestion in order to protect the county.
Right.
But that's not the item that's before the board right now. Site plan.
Mr. Chairman, if I could maybe add a little clarity to this, because I was the very one that made the motion.
And you're Mr. Witterow.
Yes, Robert Waterow, District 2.
Okay.
I made that motion, and it was my understanding that they would bring us an updated traffic study after school started, but this would also allow them to go ahead and proceed, because I know that we were going to see more of this project. It's not a snap your fingers and done. It's going to be, several months, year, 18-month project, which would, my intent was to allow this company to go ahead and proceed with their dirt work, their earth moving, their road project, even construction of the initial construction of the buildings, and then at some point bring us a traffic study. I don't think that, my interpretation is the traffic study is not going to really change the outcome of this. Yes, it will give us some more information, and I think it would give us some information to maybe make a recommendation to planners in the future that maybe some roads need to be updated, etc., what have you. But my intention was for them to go ahead and proceed and then bring us this traffic study after the schools had returned to session, because I think that was Mr. Comer's main concern, was the school buses and the school traffic, and that's about the only thing that has really changed. And that wouldn't have been an issue provided we weren't dealing with this COVID-19 problem.
Okay.
So that's my comment, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. James, do you have any comments?
I do. I have a couple of comments. One is, yes, we agreed that we would update the traffic study after school started, either in the fall or the spring. Because of course, at that time, due to COVID, we didn't know when school would start or if it would start. 2 or 3 weeks ago, we saw the school board was considering some kind of an alternative schedule to have some students come a couple of days a week, other students come another couple of days a week. And based on that, we felt like we'll go ahead and update the study using the data that Mr. Comer just mentioned and resubmit that with that data. I still don't know when school is going to start or how it's going to start. So that's the reason we went ahead and did what we said we would do, and we would get it back to you. The second thing I'd like to point to is I think you've got on your table another piece of data that we came up with. And what that is we went to the Tennessee Department of Transportation. We got the 2019 traffic map, which shows all the routes in the county. It shows the average daily traffic on all routes. And in the map you've got in front of you, it's exactly what we received from TDOT, with the exception of all that red writing, and that is ours. We were just pointing out certain routes and what the pavement widths on those routes and the shoulder widths on those routes. We have proposed to upgrade 2 Mile Road to a 24-foot wide pavement that gives us 2 12-foot lanes and 4-foot shoulders. And if you'll look on your data there, you've got ADTs that are much higher than our traffic study points to. Our traffic study, it looked at projected ADTs at several different places, and the highest one was about 1,600 and some odd vehicles a day. We got the pavement widths and shoulder widths from Tennessee Department of Transportation also. They have an inventory system, and they provided that to us for every route that they've measured in the county. And I guess my point is, every route that we see in the county, including state routes, so we'll talk about state routes. The state routes are all 24-foot wide pavement. The only places that we have anything wider than that are in the more urban areas, the cities, and those are pretty lacking. And the inventory also showed that shoulders varied from about 2 feet to 3 feet. And when you drive on a state route, if you'll ever just notice, sometimes the shoulder isn't that wide. So my point here is we're proposing a route to upgrade 2 Mile Road to a Tennessee Department of Transportation standard, 2 12-foot lanes, which are exactly what the state routes are in Dickson County that we travel on every day. The state routes carry many more trucks than 100 a day. They also carry school traffic to every school in the system. And so my logic tells me that if we feel safe traveling on Highway 48 or Highway 49 or Highway 70, then we're safe traveling on a widened 2 Mile Road.
May I address Mr. James?
Yes, please state who
Mr. James,
you are.
thank you for that.
Please state who you are, sir.
R.J. Comer. Mr. James, the traffic study isn't about safety. It's about traffic impacts. And so I don't dispute your analysis of shoulders and widths. But my question to you is, you've heard from both me and two other commissioners that their recollection is that you would redo the counts when school is in session. As of the date of your technical memorandum and the revised traffic study, the Dickson County school system said it was going to open on August 3rd. Now, we all know that may or may not happen, but its official statement, even as of today, is they're going to open for regular session on August 3rd. So doing an alternative methodology than actually doing actual counts as we discussed, my question to you is the revised traffic study you've submitted your answer to that, or are you going to still do the revised traffic study when school opens in regular session? Is this just an interim revised traffic study?
Okay, the revised traffic study that we did, we based it on the best information we had at the time, and that was we didn't know if school was going to start, and we got that information, or we didn't know how it was going to start. We got that information from the Dickson County School Board.
I
And of
understand what
course-
you were thinking, but answer my question.
And
Are
of
you going to
course-
do the counts when school's open or not? Or is this all you're going to do for us?
No, well, let me finish. That was the best information we had at the time, and it takes some time to actually revise the traffic study. We did that. Since then, we did the other study and inventory, and I did forget, we actually sent our people out in the field to all the spots that you see, just to be sure that the TDOT information was accurate. So now I'll answer your question. If the Dickson County Planning Commission wishes to have another updated study after school starts, we will certainly do that.
Thank you for answering that question. I'd still like to go through this traffic study. I think this, just as in April, we discussed the traffic study in April relative to a site plan at that time. They've now asked us to reconsider the site plan, which means we get to exercise our discretion all over again. And we get to exercise that discretion based on the information in front of us since the last time we considered it. So I have a couple of questions about the site plan itself, but I still think that we need to go through this revised traffic study because this is the traffic study that supports this site plan and the following item. And my issues with the traffic study in April were not limited to just the undercounts based on doing baseline traffic when school's not in session. There was a number of other defects in this traffic study that I'd like to give the applicant a chance to respond to. Short of that, I would like to instruct staff to make sure that my July 21st memorandum regarding this traffic study is entered into the record of this proceeding as documentary evidence of my objections. But I'd like to give the applicant a chance to respond.
Mr. Comer, can you clear your question up a little bit? Mr. James may not have understood. It was a little
It's
lengthy.
not a question, is I'm asking you, I'm saying, can I proceed to ask this applicant questions about this traffic study?
I mean, you're asking questions.
All right.
There, proceed on, but I mean, I
All right,
will
let's go.
remind you, Mr. James is an expert in this, and we have our experts on hand.
Well, the
And we have
questions I'm
other-
going to ask are the kind of questions an expert needs to answer.
Well, please ask, but we
All right.
have other questions. as
Mr.
well,
James,
sir.
you based your revised traffic study on the 2017 National Household Transportation Survey, is that correct? In
Yes.
terms of the counts? How many households are in that survey?
I have Brett Stock here with me that has the traffic study. And of course, we hired a traffic engineer as a consultant to do the study. Our firm did not produce this.
Okay, do you know the answer to the question? The question was how many households are in the study? You're basing this 10% on a household survey that's national. My question is, for that to be a valid measure of school traffic, in lieu of actually doing counts in our own community, you need to know what the data in that report is. So if you don't know the total number of households that are in that report, then how do we know that it's valid? And I'm saying, is there anybody on your side tonight that can answer that question?
Well, the traffic study is valid. That's valid information.
We decide whether it's valid, sir. We thank you that you think it is. Of course, you would not submit to us a study you think is invalid, but it's our decision as to whether it provides the necessary information for us to support it, and that's what I'm trying to get at. Do you know how many of the households that were surveyed that are the basis of your 10% number were in Tennessee?
Well, I would have to review the report again to tell you exactly what that number is.
Well, I can tell you. The number of households that were surveyed nationally that were rural households is 23,084, and none of them are in Tennessee. I can also tell you that there is, from the same agency that prepared the 2017 National Housing Transportation Survey, there is a guidance document that says, and I quote, users of the data, this is the 2017 data, users of the data should be cautious when computing estimates for smaller population groups such as specific geographies. Are you familiar with, I can give you the citation to what that is. That is the 2017 National Household Transportation Survey summary from the Federal Highway Administration. Section 1.2, reliability of the estimates. Sounds to me like the very agency that did the survey said you shouldn't use it to estimate smaller population groups or specific geographies, which is kind of how you're using it, isn't it?
Well, and of course, it's the best data that the traffic engineer could find without going and doing another traffic count due to we did not know when school would open.
Well, you knew as of the date of the traffic study that at least the school district intended to open on August 3rd. That's still the official policy of our school district.
Sir, he's been working on the revised traffic study for probably 2 months now. You requested a revised traffic study, you said in what, June, May? We were trying to do the best we could to prevent the project from being held up.
I'm not questioning that you thought you were doing the right thing. I'm questioning your methodology. We can disagree whether it was the right thing, but we still have to look at the methodology. Are you aware that in January 2020, the Federal Highway Administration also published a document about changing the way in which it does the National Household Transportation Survey? It found that self-reporting and the methodologies in the 2017 survey are outdated, and that it's in fact going to change the way it does any future survey. Are you familiar with that?
We did discuss that, and we had talked about waiting until the data was updated, but we felt like we wanted to get something back in your hands. But that's also the reason we updated what we submitted with the 2019 traffic map from the Tennessee Department of Transportation.
And I appreciate it, but there was no rush. I mean, as you just heard Mr. Darnell say, there's going to be a number of things coming before us. We had all discussed having trip counts based on the actual data in the community when school is in session. There was no rush to get it to us now. While I appreciate that you felt that promptness was a virtue, for me, accuracy is a virtue. And I can't, based on the evidence that I have in front of me, trust that the use of the 2017 National Household Transportation Survey 10% number that you used is an adequate number that represents our community, because it doesn't include enough data on rural Tennessee communities to be analogous to our own community. Second, it was premature and unnecessary because we don't know whether school is going to be in session on August 3rd or not. In fact, the official policy it is. The very data the methodology that they use, the FHA already says is out of date. And the use of the data in the manner in which you used it is contrary to the guidelines from the Federal Highway Administration. So regardless of your good intentions, the data that you presented to us just can't be relied upon for the purpose you're relying upon it. Let's go on.
We can argue that from now on, but we did state that if this body wants another updated traffic study after school starts, we will provide that, as we will have multiple submittals to this body.
Well, great. We appreciate that.
Mr. Comer, he's agreed to give us another traffic study if we wish for that. Do you have anything else to that? Because we do have other questions and need to.
I do, but this is important. I do have a couple of questions. I want to make sure that the next revised traffic study actually includes the remedies to the defects in the original traffic study, and I'd like to remind this applicant what those defects are. May I proceed?
Proceed.
In the original traffic study in April, I expressed that the way in which fuel trucks are counted, that you didn't do any equivalency. You treated large multi-axle fuel trucks as equivalent to passenger cars in terms of your trip impacts, and I proposed to you at that time, and I want to propose to you again, that the standard and practice of transportation engineering when measuring a known amount of multi-axle trucks is to not treat them equivalent to passenger cars, but with a multiplier effect, because everyone knows, it's common sense, if you're stuck in traffic behind a row of trucks, or even one truck, traffic moves slower. They're bigger than passenger cars, they're slower than passenger cars, and treating them as passenger cars for trip impacts simply defies logic, but it also is contrary to professional standards. And I would advise you to take a look at not only the Institute of Transportation Engineers methodology, but I would also refer you to the Journal of Advanced Transportation that says that the way it should be done is by doing passenger car equivalent calculations. And so I would like you to, when the next time you revise this traffic study, to make sure you do that passenger car equivalent analysis and don't treat truck trips as passenger cars.
Mr. Comer, I'd like to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
I asked our traffic engineer that did this, Mr. Phillips, about that actually today. And if you will open the traffic report to the appendix, just say B23, just for reference, you will see in his input for the Synchro 10 report, which is based off of the highway capacity manual, that he has a heavy vehicle factor in there. So those are actually accounted for in his peak hour factors, his daily traffic, his level of service. So that actually is accounted for, and it is listed in the spit outs from his reports.
All right, I'll take a look at that. I think what I'm looking for is a more PCE analysis than just a weighted analysis is what he did, but I appreciate that. Let's talk about cumulative impacts. I mentioned that in April. In particularly, cumulative impacts, the particular cumulative impact project I'd like you to study is the Quick Trip truck stop, which is already approved. It's approved at 2 Mile Road and Highway 46. It's an 8,300 square foot, 9-acre site truck stop that's due to be built and operational in 2020. I think you should specifically add those trips and a cumulative impact analysis on the next traffic study. Are you willing to do that?
We will search for that information. We asked for that. We haven't gotten any information on if it's going to be built or when it's going to be built, but we will request that information again.
I appreciate it. Yeah, just a reminder, cumulative impacts don't require that certainty of a project being built, but it generally, if a project is approved, and there's no evidence that the developer or the applicant has walked away, you can assume that it will be built, even though it might not be. Remember, a traffic impact study isn't supposed to show the best case scenario. It's actually supposed to show the worst case scenario. The last thing I'd like to talk to you, well, actually, there's two more things. Have you considered doing an alternative analysis of what if you did have an off-ramp at Porter Road from 840? If you had an I-840 off-ramp, could you study that analysis? Could you do an analysis of an alternative? We're not saying that you necessarily will have it, but well, right now we don't know that an off-ramp at 840 would never be approved. You know, you may have talked to a few people there and you may have satisfied yourself that it wouldn't be, but no application has been made. As far as, you know, it's still foreseeable that it could happen if an application were made or an application made and denied. But until that happens, it seems to me it's possible to go to this site for an off-ramp at I-840 and And certainly studying that as an alternative would be helpful and informative. Are you willing to do that?
We will talk, that would be a Department of Transportation project. And of course, that's been looked at in the past. And of course, the Porter Road, the bridge across 840 at Porter Road, you would have to cross multiple properties to get to this one. But we will make a request to the Department of Transportation for this again.
Well, that'd be great. Because what we don't have is we don't have any official response on that. We have both from members of the community and members of this body, we basically have a lot of people waving their hands saying what they think DOT would do. But we don't know what DOT would do until somebody asks them officially and they officially respond. I understand that there's a number of processes in that, but my suggestion would be that this traffic study would be much more valid if that process was rather than we don't said no, then if they actually say no, you don't have to study it. But if we can have some documentary evidence of an official response on the issue, I think the issue would close. Or maybe they'll surprise us and say yes.
We will do that.
My last issue, and I appreciate you letting me take you through this, because I think it's really important to understand it. And frankly, just kind of because the public doesn't get to come up and ask questions, part of our job is to ask these questions so the public can hear them asked and give you the opportunity to respond to them so the public can hear your responses. So that's giving you the opportunity to respond to things that are being said about your traffic study. My last question. In traffic study, you base your total trip counts on an exemplar fuel terminal. And where I could not see the logic, and perhaps you can direct me to it, that Nashville fuel terminal had 200 total daily trips. On what basis did you decide not to just assume the same 294 daily trips of the exemplar that you were using in the first place?
Okay.
We have an exact count of how many trucks to expect at our terminal. The count that was done in Nashville was 100% just to obtain a distribution of how those trucks come to a terminal, leave terminals, and an approximate peak hour factor for that terminal. Provide you with the most accurate data we can. And that's simply all that was to obtain a distribution of trucks and apply that to our known number of trucks to determine a peak hour factor used for our terminal at intersections, level of service of roads, etc. That was the only reason the count at the terminal in Nashville was completed, was just to try to obtain some kind of accurate data on a distribution of trucks at a fuel terminal, because we had nothing to go off of. When
you say that you refer to your known number of trips, what is that known number of trips based on? How do you know it?
100 trucks is the max that this fuel terminal could serve in a day. Okay. That's all that the tanks would have capacity for to fill up. Okay. So therefore, 100 trucks per day is the max capacity, and that would be the worst case scenario for this terminal as shown today.
Thank you for that. Would you be willing to accept a condition of approval that says that that 200 trips a day is your maximum allowed trips, and the enforceability of that could be a number of things? We could put a counter at your gate, and if you hit 100 entry trucks before your 24-hour period is over, the gates close. We could require you to give a report back in a year to show compliance. But are you willing to accept a condition of approval that limits your number of truck trips to 200 a day?
Mr. Comer, we can't put a limit on what private enterprise does.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Wetero, but my question wasn't to you, it was to the applicant.
Let's come to order. Let's come to order.
The only thing with that is there's a fear always, as I understand that you've just moved here, but whenever we have Gulf hurricanes, we have a very difficult time getting fuel into this area. So if they are 100% slammed and we are having to bring in extra ethanol to this terminal, etc., then it might be difficult to stick to 100 trucks a day. We might be looking at 110 to 115.
Yeah, and I may not be from Tennessee, but I've certainly drafted probably thousands of conditions of approval, and they're the same everywhere. If we could find a way to accommodate the issue of force majeure, would you be willing to accept such a condition?
Mr. Comer,
Yes.
how many last questions do you have for them?
I'm done on the traffic study. I've got one on the site plan.
Well, please move through it, sir.
Are you going to answer my question, applicant?
The answer to your question is, we expect 100 trucks a day.
All right.
I didn't understand how you want to count that or report that, but we know that the 100 trucks a day, it won't be, there won't be 100 trucks a day for some period of time. It may be years. We're actually expecting somewhere in the 40 to 60 trucks a day initially.
I hope you're right.
So how many years would you expect us to report back to you?
Typically, a condition of approval like that is a 5-year condition of approval, and that if it's consistent after 5 years, then the self-reporting mechanisms become more relaxed. There's all sorts of ways to draft it that in no way impedes business's ability to function, and of course accommodates for extraordinary circumstances. It's just a question of drafting, but it always can be done. But I thank you for your answer.
Thank you.
Question on the site plan review.
Mr. Comer, I got Mr. Brogdon would like to ask a question,
Oh.
sir.
It's his district.
If he wishes to finish up,
Okay.
I don't have a
Mr.
problem
Mr.
yielding.
Comer, go ahead, please, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Darnell has the site plan in front of him. I apologize. I didn't bring the site plan with me. I thought we were going to get new ones. My question to you, actually, I apologize. There's two. My first question is, are you going to have a metering station on this site? And if so, where on the site plan is that shown?
I didn't understand the question. What was that?
Are you going to have a metering station, a lateral metering station on this site? And if so, is that shown on the site plan?
We show where we intend to have a metering station. We don't show the details of that. Again,
Okay.
we said very clearly in April that you would get multiple submittals for construction plans.
But on this site plan, you do show where it might be, just in general.
That's correct.
Okay, Mr. Darnell, you see that? Can you give us an idea where it is
If you look on C 1.3,
on C
There is-
1.3?
Would you like to see it, Mr. Comer?
Yes, thank you. Just bring it over here and take a look. Thank you. All right, I have it in front of me now. Where is it?
If I'm looking at the correct drawings, it's been a while since we submitted this. This is a drawing set that was stamped on 4/8. On C 1.3, we have pipeline connection by others at the exit of the terminal, so it'd be the south entrance, or
Yes.
the south driveway exit.
And so the reference pipeline connection area by others, is that's where the metering station would be, and we'll get more detail on that on another submittal.
Correct.
Thank you so much for that. Second question, this regards the blending. I understand that what's going to happen is that fuel additives are blended at the rack as they go into the tanker trucks. But the reference to the rack is where I'm confused. Is the rack where this blending occurs shown on this site plan? And if so, do you direct me where that is? Because I've been looking for the rack and I haven't found it.
The rack is represented on the same drawing page. It's actually zoomed in on C 1.4. In the center of the widened drive, you'll see proposed truck loading rack.
Proposed truck loading rack. On C 1.3?
1.4.
1.4.
Oh, sorry. I see it. Thank you very much. And then with regard to that same blending, which of the tanks shown on the C 1.3 hold the additives that are added to the fuel? Are they're held in separate tanks, I imagine. Which of the tanks that you show hold those additives?
If you flip over to page C 1.5, looking to see if it actually shows, listed, or has a tag on any of the drawings. The additive tanks in this picture on C 1.5 directly northeast or to the upper right side of the truck rack. You'll see a rectangle with a bunch of small rectangles in it. That is the additive tanks with the sitting on a spill containment pad.
Okay, that's helpful because I would have assumed they were in the tank bay, and they're not. They're smaller tanks that are located right behind the rack.
Correct. In their own spill containment pad.
Great. Thank you very much for clarifying that. That's all the only questions I have on the site plan.
Mr. Brogdon, you have a question?
Yes, David Brogdon. The site plan review, what we were here before in April, and I think we contemplated, as Mr. Wetterow had indicated, Mr. James had indicated, was an improvement on 2 Mile Road. Now, we've had the multiple meetings we've discussed the existing 2 Mile Road and the improvements on it. What I'd like to ask Mr. James is, what assurances do we have that you're going to be able to improve 2 Mile Road all the way to Highway 46?
Mr. James, did you hear the question?
Yes, we heard the question. And we have, of course, this body, we've talked about improvements to 2 Mile Road. We've had meetings with staff at the city of Dickson to deal with 2 Mile Road that's in the city limits. And we will go to both bodies with plans and a commitment from Titan Partners to widen 2 Mile Road with an agreement.
You're saying you'll have an agreement with the city as well as the county to widen 2 Mile Road?
We would do, and of course we have to do that with the city because a portion of it is in the city of Dickson.
Yeah, I have talked and met with city officials, and my understanding is they have no intention to change 2 Mile Road within the city limit at all, including refusal to change the 90-degree curve or anything around behind the Holiday Inn or all the way past Colton's. So what I'm getting at, we've contemplated, I didn't vote for it the last time, but I think many of the members contemplated that you had approval to with the city, that you would widen 2 Mile Road all the way to 46. If this body contemplates approving this site plan, what it appears you're going to do is you're going to widen the county portion, you're going to bottleneck it into a small funnel that can't be used. You can't turn big trucks in a 90-degree turn, and you're going to cause some wrecks and accidents. And that bothers and concerns me. If you can't get the city on board, why are you asking us to get on board?
Of course, as I said, a portion of it is in the Dickson County and a portion is in the city of Dickson. We will submit plans to both to cause 2 Mile Road to be able to take the traffic that we expect 100 trucks a day out of this facility.
Would you be willing to continue this for a period of 60 days, agree to continue all this for 60 days until you have assurances from the city of Dickson that you can do that? Because I'm hearing that the city of Dickson will not do it. I was on the phone yesterday with Steve Allen with the Tennessee Department of Transportation. He said if the city doesn't sign off on it, you're not going to have access to it. So I don't want us to approve something that is basically going to bottleneck something up and going to have trucks piled all the way down 2 Mile Road and nobody can get in and out. Would you agree to continue this for 60 days, everything?
My name is Tom White, and I'm the attorney for the applicant, and no, we are not willing to defer this matter, and I want to be very clear about our position. There's been a lot of information given to the members of this group about delaying and deferring this matter. I don't think that's been very well thought through because I've discussed this with the county attorneys, and it's very clear under the subdivision regulations that with respect to final plats, that the commission has 60 days. What the subdivision regulations say very clearly are that if it is not acted upon within done, this is automatically approved with no conditions. And I'll read your citation. Failure of the planning commission to act upon a plat within the prescribed time shall be deemed approval of the plat. So in 5 days, the plat will be approved automatically with no conditions. My client has discussed this specifically with the county attorneys. We don't want anything to come in that's not right on the table. So we have been very clear that we were willing to whatever conditions might be placed when the plat is considered this evening. With respect to the road improvements, the road improvements will be done within the right of way. And if there's an issue with respect to the truck traffic on this road, we would like to think that anybody would like to see the road would be done in a safe manner. I am somewhat incredulous to believe that someone would say this is a heavy industrial area, contemplation of trucks, obviously, and there's a road improvement plan that's being suggested, and we'll clarify this, at the expense of the applicant. And it's somewhat incredulous that someone would argue that we are not going to allow the roads to be improved so that traffic will be a safety hazard. So it's absolutely clear. We want to stick with our commitment. We don't want this to be basically approved automatically without conditions, which is what all of those that were advocating for a delay or deferral would have resulted in. So my comment, Mr. Brogdon, is that the road improvements that we've agreed to do, we're willing to fund those. We've made that a commitment this evening when we get to it. But frankly, there is no interest by my client in delaying or deferring this, and those that are asking for that, I think, really are not quite sure what they're asking for the reasons I've said. But that's where we are. We're willing to make a safe road as opposed to what is out there now. What it needs to be improved, we recognize that, and anybody that contemplated a heavy industrial use out here would understand the road would need to be improved. My client does. They're willing to make that commitment.
In that same section you mentioned where it would automatically be approved, it also says it can be continued by agreement. What you're saying is your client is not willing to continue this for the purpose of satisfying agreement with the city of Dickson.
My client is not willing to delay or defer the matter because we have made a clear commitment to improve the road to the safe standards that Mr. James has discussed with this group already. We've made that commitment, and we can't imagine that when the facts are on the table, that any governmental agency is going to allow the road or insist the road be used in an unsafe manner. That makes no sense. So that's our position. Yes, sir.
And finally, the statement in the paper where Titan has previously agreed to provide Water Authority Dickson County Executive Director with a draft of the version of SPC based on the current design criteria by August the 7th to allow them to review. You're asking us to go ahead and approve this, even though you still owe Water Authority Dickson County some materials, so they can give us some guidance as to whether or not we have going to have safe drinking water should there be some type of catastrophe in our county. So again, you're not willing to continue this matter for the road, and I'm asking you now, are you not willing to continue it so you can get the information to the Water Authority of Dickson County as you stated in the paper?
We are not willing to delay or defer. We are going to continue to submit, as we have, to all the other agencies that we deal with. We want to be very clear. There's a lot of regulatory oversight over this particular development. It can be TDEC, it can be a number of other agencies. We are subject to all the regulatory oversight. In my opinion, that issue is not the Planning Commission issue. That may be the Water Authority, it may be TDEC on the air permit. There's a number of issues out there, but those are all subject to regulatory authority. My client is very much aware of that, and we are aware that we need to comply and submit the requested information to every agency. We've done that thus far. We will continue to do it.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Qualls?
Well, since counsel for the developer has suggested incredulity, I I'm going to say I'm somewhat incredulous that this period during which this body, I guess, has been stopped from acting to do anything is supposed to count toward that 60-day period. We haven't been able to do anything between the Sartori grant and the discussion by the BZA and the fact that the last meeting had to be postponed for 2 weeks due to the pandemic. I want to ask the county's legal representation here, is that a valid 60 days, considering this body hasn't been able to really do anything with regard to this issue for the vast majority of those 60 days? It's an argument, Mr. Qualls. It's an argument. You know, it's certainly in the zoning resolution, in the subdivision regulations, that action's got to be taken within 60 days after final plat is filed. The developer's attorneys made it clear what their position is, and if this body wants to not take action within 60 days and to make that argument, I guess that would be the argument. The argument would be somehow that the COVID pandemic is the reason you weren't able to do it. And I don't know how that'll play before court, but I know this: the safe approach. We're kind of blending now, conflating item 5 and item 6.
I understand.
But the safe approach would be rather than allow this project to go down approved, arguably approved on paper without any conditions, would be to either approve it with conditions or disapprove it. That's the safe. Take some affirmative action, right? That's the safe approach. Otherwise, if you allow the time to pass, the argument, we can make that argument. And
understood.
I don't know how a court would rule on that, and I think that would be a kind of an issue of first impression.
R.J. Comer, I have a question for council on the same issue. Council, thank you for that. Just to be clear, the 60 days only applies to the subdivision, which is item 6 on our agenda. It does not apply to the site plan review, which is item 5.
Well, that's true, but again, I go back to this. You've previously approved the site plan, and we intend to argue that the site plan was approved, and it was approved properly, because that's what this body did, and we represent you. And this body voted 7-3 to approve the site plan, and that is our objective, to defend that decision.
What would be the effect? Not that I think this could happen or might happen, but if this body were to deny the site plan review that's before us today, would that nullify the April decision? Because we're now hearing the site plan review again, exercising our discretion again. We can exercise that discretion by approving it with additional conditions, by denying it. And all of those actions would substitute for the April action, would they not?
We're going to represent whatever your vote is.
All right.
We are your attorneys.
Right, but there's no 60-day deadline applied to site plan review. It applies to subdivisions.
I'm not aware of one. Mr. Collins?
That's correct. The Tennessee code and the 60-day deadline clock ticking applies to division of land.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right.
Harold Williams from District 7. I do have a question for Mr. Potter. From the meeting in June, where and if I'm out of turn,
No, sir. No, sir.
but I'm going to talk about I'm talking about the. I'll find my agenda here.
Sure. Preliminary plat?
No, the final plat, the final site plan that was on the June agenda had to be stayed because of some legal activity. And this commission's understanding was that did not start any clock on that final site plan. So as far as I understand, this planning commission has not seen the final site plan as an item on the agenda. So this whole idea of 60 days and expirations, I think is
there was
incorrect.
there was a stay of the proceedings when an appeal was filed, an administrative appeal was filed from Mr. Darnell's decision to submit this to you as a permissible use, and that went before the BZA, I think, on July the 7th is when it made its decision. So yes, I mean, that's an argument. Again, I can't stand before you and definitively say that we've got an absolute defense to the argument that after 60 days of filing, it becomes final, but certainly that's another argument. that there was a period of time in there in which there was a stay of action.
All right, thank you.
We do have a proper motion and a second on the floor, so is there any further discussion? And if there's not, I will ask Ms. Hodges to repeat the motion that was put forth, because it's been a lengthy discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Is that Mr. Berry?
Yes, it is.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
On the staff comments, I'll just read this quickly. The property abuts I-40 and I-840, both interstate roadways, yet the development cannot utilize either of them. How did we determine that it cannot use either of those?
That's probably a question for Mr. James versus the staff.
Okay, I can answer that. The I-40, of course, you know the intersection there at 840, and take the Hogan Road bridge right there. It's too close to the ramp that comes off of 840 to actually improve that and get ramps in for that. To go to 840, as Mr. Comer pointed out, the closest spot you could do that would be at Corder Road. And of course, to do that, that's a Tennessee Department of Transportation decision to do that. And then of course, to get to this property, you would cross other multiple properties to do that.
Okay, thank you for that. Let me ask you this. Have the proper authorities received any type of application from you for entrance off of I-40 or 840?
Mr. Berry, I think your audio broke up. Could you repeat that?
Yes. Has applications been made to proper authorities for entrance off of I-40 or I-840?
Not an official application, no. We've discussed that with the Transportation Department, and that was the answer that we got. But as Mr. Comer pointed out, him and get the answer back, which the answer will be what I just said.
Okay, thank you. So just to be clear about it, when it is stated that it abuts I-40 and I-840, yet the development cannot utilize either of them, that is false, correct?
Well, you broke up on me. What was that again?
In the staff comments where it states that the property abuts I-40 and I-840, yet the development cannot utilize either of them, that would be false, correct?
That is not our statement. That you'd have to ask Mr. Collins about that.
Okay,
Yes,
Mr.
Mr. Berry, I'll answer that question. Perhaps could have inserted the word cannot currently utilize either. In order to get access, there would have to be an access made available, and that would be an improvement, which as the applicant, Mr. James stated, they would have to submit an application to TDOT to see about getting approval to create an access.
Okay, something, Mr. James, that the client would entertain.
I didn't understand that question.
He said, is that something we would entertain, which you've already said we would make
an
application to the
Yes,
state?
yes, we'll make an official application to that if you wish to see that. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? If not, I'm gonna ask Ms. Hodges to repeat the proper motion and second on the floor.
Motion was made by Robert Wetterow and seconded by Mac Pilkington to approve this site plan.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, if not, we're gonna do a roll call vote.
Shane Chandler,
Yes.
Mac Pilkerton,
Yes.
Robert Qualls,
No.
David Brogdon,
No.
Harold Williams,
No.
Larry Evans? Gary Peeler?
No.
Okay, Wayne. Robert Comer?
No.
Fails.
Okay, that fails. With that failing, is there any reason to move to item number 6? Would you like to take a recess? Okay, let's take about a 5 or 10 minute recess, please. Can I get a motion to recess?
Okay.
Okay, we'll return from our recess. And at this time, I'd like to ask our county attorney, Tim Potter, to please address the board.
So members of the commission, so you've taken action on an action tonight not to approve the site plan. And that matter was put back on this agenda tonight, I think at the request of the developer. Here's what we're, as county attorneys, as your lawyers, what we're concerned about. We have to respond to a writ of certiorari that's still pending. Technically, what you did just then was vote down a motion to approve the site plan. So our opinion is it would be substantially cleaner if there was an affirmative vote either way. In other words, if it's the will of this body to vote down the site plan, that needs to be the motion. And if that is the motion, then I would remind you that there needs to be a stated reason for your motion, because any action that an agency of the county takes is always challenged based on one legal standard, and that is whether or not it was arbitrary and capricious. Did you make a decision just because you just kind of wanted to, or you just didn't like it? So there has to be some bases for your motion, and I would ask that you take some action affirmatively tonight to assist you.
Mr. Potter, that type of motion would have to be brought forth by one of the opposing votes?
No.
Okay. Yes, sir, Mr. Brogdon.
Mr. Chairman, I move to reject the plan, deny the site plan based upon insufficient information, including but not limited to the access to Highway 46, the cooperation with the city of Dickson in accessing 2 Mile Road to 46, and the impact on the water source of Dickson County through the water.
R.J. Comer, I second the motion.
Okay, I have a proper motion to deny this plat by David Brogdon for reasons stated on record, and a proper second by R.J. Comer. Any further discussion in this manner? And a yes vote is to deny it, a no vote is to deny their denial.
I'll call for a question, Mr. Chairman.
Question being called, we will have a roll call vote.
Todd Berry.
Hold on just one moment. Let's, one clarification on what yes and no means again, please.
Yes is to approve the denial, no would be to deny the denial. That you do not agree with this motion is a no. If you agree with this motion, it's a yes.
Thank you.
Do you need to hear the motion again?
You hear that, Mr. Berry?
Yes, I do not. No, sir, I do not need to hear the motion again.
If you agree with this motion to deny this request, you will vote. You do not want to deny this motion, vote no.
Yes, I understand.
Okay, we'll now go into roll call vote, and it's your turn, Mr. Berry.
Robert Witherow.
No.
Chandler.
No.
Mac Pilkerton.
No.
Robert Qualls.
Yes.
David Brogdon.
Yes.
Yes.
Larry Evans.
No.
Gary Peeler.
Yes.
Robert Comer.
Yes.
A 6-4 vote, motion carries.
Okay,
Don't we need 7 votes?
plan is majority,
Thank you.
and it carries to deny. Now we'll move to item 6. Mr. Potter?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chandler, if I could be recognized. We believe that you should take action tonight on item 6. I think that would be the appropriate thing to do to make the record clean, and to avoid any argument of automatic approval of the final plat. So that's our opinion.
Thank you. You heard from legal counsel, Mr. Darnell. The item 6 is final plat 31, part of parcel 012.00 14669 acres, Hogan Road, M1 Heavy Industrial, 6th District.
Okay, you had a copy in your pack that was sent to you. Of course, this is the final plat. The preliminary plat has already been approved. This is the final. We do have on the water line and the fire hydrants, and we also have bonds on the road for the construction of 2 Mile Road, and we also for the construction use. Mr. Collins?
Planner Collins here. A review of this request. The items that staff would like to just draw your attention to is that, of course, the information here, we are taking, this is involving the creation of taking a parent parcel and creating a new lot of record from that parent parcel. The reason why that it went through the two-part plat review is because there were major infrastructure involved, such as the extension of a public road and extension of a trunk line for the water to be provided to the site, and a number of fire hydrants according to the plans that we reviewed. So that is part of the reason why that we had the two-part review. Another issue that staff certainly wants to make sure that that took place before approval of the final plat was that the construction plans for the design of all the infrastructure that I just mentioned has been reviewed by the each jurisdiction's road standards, both the county and the city of Dickson, where the improvements are going to go for improving the existing 2 Mile Road, as well as the extension of the that eastward portion into this property of 2 Mile Road. Those plans, the purpose of that is to ensure that the plans reflect that the improvements are going to be built to the county road standards for the portion that's going to be in the unincorporated area of Dickson County. Of course, after a preliminary plat, as I've advised you before, the applicant does have the option to either complete all improvements prior to the final plat submittal or submit a surety guaranteeing the installment of those improvements. So that is certainly an item that staff would want confirmation from the applicant on as part of this final plat approval that the construction plans have been reviewed and surety for estimate of those improvements be formalized and presented that has in fact been done. As far as back during preliminary plat review, staff did raise issue with nearby Nils Creek to the south, that the plans, at least when plans are to actually develop the site are done, that drainage related facilities to minimize the negative impact to Nils Creek would be constructed. As we could have seen with subsequent site plan reviews to follow, we would have been able to confirm and review that the drainage related facilities would be accounted for. But certainly for a final with a division of land, then that's a detail that we raise as part of the more comprehensive look at this of plat as well as site plan. So I certainly wanted to just make mention of that in my comments for your information. Let's see. I think that at this point, just, of course, skipping down to letter D under plat issues, it was confirmed during preliminary plat that the development for Lot 1 will be provided an individual septic system. So that the final plat needs, the final plat that I reviewed does provide the area to be used for sewage disposal. So that would append the county environmentalist signature on this final plat that is part of the necessary signatures that we always ask for. And of course, the letter comments, which we've already talked about in the previous item, was the amended traffic impact study, and of course, this is for the Planning Commission. If you're so inclined to approve this plat tonight, one such contingency would be for the applicant to provide you a revised traffic impact study. So that would be my advice on how we could very well address that letter E item that identifies a revised traffic impact study. So other than that, I only had 3 bullet items for this final plat, since we did have a lot of the issues that were discussed and identified during preliminary plat. So all it's lacking now is all the necessary signatures for this final plat, and confirmation that the construction plans have been finalized, submitted for review by the respective entities, and provided. And then lastly, just a recommended addition is just identifying with a label on the final plat that there is a portion of this Lot 1 where it's zoned A1. And we, of course, during preliminary plat, we got confirmation that none of this development would take place in the A1 portion, only the M1. So, but it's still, as part of crossing T's and dotting I's, that label should be on there to match our current zoning map. But I guess that's really all I've got. I'll just take questions as I get them.
Okay. Mr. James, do you all have any questions for Mr. Collins?
We don't have any questions. On the A1, we showed that on the 2 sheets that, we had an index sheet that showed the whole parcel, and we did show the A1 zoning on the 2 sheets behind that. So we can show it on the index sheet too if you want, but it's on the 2 behind that.
Okay. At this time, Mr. Potter would like to address the commission again.
Well, Mr. Chandler, I think it depends on what the will of this has several conditions that we would suggest be attached to any motion to approve. I don't know if there hasn't been a motion made yet.
No, sir.
But there are a number of conditions in addition to the conditions that Mr. Collins mentioned that ought to attach to any approval action of the final plat in order to protect the community. And among those conditions would be, in addition to the conditions that Mr. Collins has mentioned, appropriate sureties, which I understand, and if improvements are made, that's a condition. That they make a funding commitment. The developer should submit to Dickson County a funding commitment in writing within 60 days for any and all improvements to 2 Mile Road, and any, if any, in furtherance and satisfaction of our subdivision regulations. That as a condition, clear any and all requirements imposed by TDEC, EPA, the Water Authority, TDOT, any other regulatory or governmental agency. And that while Hogan Road will be used as a construction entrance, access to the site will be limited to 2 Mile Road once the site is operational. Any other conditions under the subdivision regulations. So that was drafted by our office in case a motion to approve was made as appropriate conditions to approval of this project, but it may be moot depending on what action the body takes.
Yes, Mr. Brogdon.
If we could, I'd like to ask the applicant again, with the staff comments specifically suggesting that the minimum negative impact on Nails Creek, and that has been a concern of mine, and a concern of a number of people, that a delay, an agreed delay for 60 days between the applicant and us would give sufficient time for the Water Authority of Dickson County to give us a thumbs up that it's okay, that we're going to have a negative or a very little risk factor to the water for all the people of Dickson County. And I'm asking again, would the applicant be willing to continue by agreement the approval or denial of this for 60 days in order to get this information to Water Authority of Dickson County, excuse me, and allow their independent engineer to give an opinion?
I'll answer, we are not willing to delay or defer this matter for the reasons that I articulated some time ago. We've sat here tonight and listened to these reasons, and we're repeating, we are aware of all the regulatory oversight by all the different agencies that were mentioned in part by the county attorneys. There is no reason why we would defer tonight, understanding that the very issues you're raising can always be raised as we come through the process. In part, the preliminary plat plan was approved. This is a final, and we're respectfully asking that this body approve it tonight. We feel the conditions that were articulated by the county attorneys are some things that we would agree to. And so I just state on the record right now that the conditions, both by the planner and by county legal, are items that we would agree to. But again, all the regulatory oversights were mentioned by you. We're subject to all of them, and we are willing to submit and continue to work with them as we have from the time that we submitted. Thank you.
So what I'm hearing, if the Water Authority of Dickson County has an engineering plan that says some other feature or some other protection of our water source needs to be done, are you willing to pay for that protection for our water source in Dickson County?
Well, we'll have to know what the proposal is, of course, first. I don't think you can articulate that tonight, but I'm telling you my client's willing to consider any proposal that's given to us. But as of this juncture, we don't have one in front of us, so you can hardly expect us to answer what you can't articulate tonight.
And continuing it 60 days would give us that opportunity. And you're telling us you're not willing to continue it by agreement for 60 days.
That was my answer.
Okay, that's what I thought. If I may, based on what we've heard, I wish to move to reject this plan without prejudice based on the insufficient information, including the refusal of the applicant to do what they suggested by providing this information to Dickson County to then have an engineer look at it. Based on those, I move to reject the plan without prejudice.
Okay, I have a proper motion by David Brogdon to deny this request of the final plat based upon the statements he just made on record.
R.J. Comer, I'll second.
Have a motion by Mr. Brogdon and a proper second by R.J. Comer to deny this. We'll now move into discussion. Any further discussion? Yes, sir, Mr. Mike Pilkerton.
Well, if you ain't gonna build a plant, you don't need the water. If you ain't gonna build a building, you don't need the water. So why talk about water if you ain't gonna build it? That's just a waste of time.
We're not talking about water, Robert Qualls, 5th District, to supply these folks. We're talking about the water supply for the intake there on Turnbull Creek, which lies downstream from this, and the proper protection of that water sourcage for that part of the county that's served by that part of the Water Authority of Dickson County.
I thought you were talking about.
No, it's not supply of water to that. And of course, Mr. Brogdon, Mr. Trumbull, this by moving to do this without prejudice, it means that it can be approached again by this planning commission when and if further and adequate of what's being done is provided to the satisfaction of this commission. Okay. And I would urge all of us as commissioners to vote in favor of Mr. Brogdon's motion.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, so we'll now, yes, Mr. Woodrow.
Mr. Chairman, I will call for the question.
Proper question being called, we'll go into a roll call vote. So to vote yes on this, you are agreeing with Mr. Brogdon and Mr. Comer's motion that you deny this request. No is that you do not agree with denying with this request. Mr. Berry, are you clear on the motion and the way to vote?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Mr. Peeler?
Yes, I am.
Okay, all right. Mr. Darnell, will you do roll call?
Todd Berry,
Yes.
Robert Witherow,
No.
Shane Chandler,
No.
Mac Pilkerton,
No.
Robert Qualls,
Yes.
David Brogdon,
Yes.
Harold Williams,
Yes.
Larry Evans,
No.
Gary Peeler,
Yes.
Robert Comer.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, motion fails.
Okay,
On
the
final
motion
plat,
passes
it
to
does-
deny.
Yes, a majority for a denial, not the supermajority for approval.
So it's gonna deny. Okay. Motion passes to deny.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Potter, did you want to make any closing statements? Okay, anybody else on the commission have anything?
Will we be meeting at our regularly scheduled meeting for August?
I do not have anything on the bottom of the agenda, but just,
That is the plan at this time, but
yes.
right now, we don't have anything on the agenda.
potentially the next planning commission meeting will be August the 13th at 7 o'clock at the Dickson County Courthouse Annex.
Mr. Chandler, before the move, I'd like to ask that on the agenda for our next meeting, we agendize a discussion of creating traffic study guidelines for Dickson County. I think that what we've learned is our applicants and our developers need to have some kind of certainty as to what we expect. Most jurisdictions have traffic study guidelines. We're one of the few that don't. I'd just like to agendize an item for our body to discuss it formally and see if we can proceed to start developing traffic study guidelines for the benefit of our development community.
Okay. To clear that up, you may want to contact the office and get with Ms. Hodges, and she can get that on the next agenda.
Thank you, sir.
I would like to thank everybody for serving. I know this is a thankless job that does not pay very well, and this job has a very big impact on our community. Thank you.